Hello students. Now today we are going to start with a new chapter, that is heredity and evolution. We have seen that reproductive processes gives rise to new individuals that are similar but subtly different. We have discussed how some amount of variation is produced even during asexual reproduction, and the number of successful variations are maximized by the process of sexual reproduction. If we observe a field of sugarcane, we find very little variations among the individual plants. But in a number of animals, including human beings, which reproduce sexually, quite distinct variations are visible among different individuals. In this chapter, we shall be studying the mechanism by which variations are created and inherited. Now, we all know that there was a reduction in the CBSE portion. Therefore, this chapter will mainly include the heredity part and not the evolution part, which has been deducted. So, let's get started. A recognizable feature of a human being, like height, complexion, shape of nose and chin, color of eye and hair, etc., are called characters or traits. The transmission of traits from the parents to their offsprings is called heredity. The hereditary information is present in the gametes of parents. Thus, gametes constitute the link between one generation and the next and pass on the maternal and paternal characters or traits to the offsprings. Now, variations. Firstly, what do you mean by variation? So, the differences in the characters or traits among the individuals of a species is called variation. The offspring is never a true copy of the parent. There are many kinds of variations in human species. Some of them are listed here, like free and attached earlobes, different complexions, that is the complexion of the skin. It could be dark, light brown, dusky, wheatish, fair, etc. Different eye color, that can be brown, hazel, blue, green, grey, amber, etc. Height can be tall or short. Chin can be cleft or pointed. Hair color can be black, brown, blonde, green, golden, etc. Hair type can be curly, wavy, straight, etc. Nose can be snub, thin or pointed, etc. Accumulation of variations. The significance of a variation shows up only if it continues to be inherited by the offspring for several generations. Inheritance from the previous generation provides both a common basic body design and subtle changes in it for the next generation. Now think about what would happen when this new generation in its turn reproduces. The second generation will have differences that they inherit from the first generation, as well as newly created differences. If one bacteria divides, then the resultant two bacteria divide again. The four individual bacteria generated would be very similar. There would be only very minor differences between them, generated due to small inaccuracies in the DNA copying. However, if sexual reproduction is involved, even greater diversity will be generated. The great advantage of variation to a species is that it increases the chances of its survival in a changing environment. Now, do all these variations in a species have equal chances of surviving in the environment in which they find themselves? Obviously not. Depending on the nature of variations, different individuals would have different kinds of advantages. Bacteria that can withstand heat will survive better in a heat wave, as we discussed earlier. Selections of variance by environmental factor forms the basis for evolutionary processes. Now, before moving on with the chapter, there are certain very important terms which we need to study. Firstly, what are chromosomes? So, a chromosome is a thread-like structure in the nucleus of a cell formed of DNA which carries the genes. What is a gene? It is a unit of DNA on chromosome which governs the synthesis of one protein that controls a specific characteristic of an organism. Genes are actually units of heredity which transfer characteristics from parents to their offsprings during reproduction. Dominant gene. The gene which decides the appearance of an organism even in presence of an alternative contrasting gene is known as a dominant gene. It is represented by a capital letter. Recessive gene. The gene which can decide the appearance of an organism only in the presence of another identical gene is called recessive gene. It is represented by the corresponding small letter. Genotype. It is the description of genes present in an organism. Phenotype. It is a characteristic, or more specifically, it is a morphological characteristic which is visible in an organism. First filial generation or F1 generation. When two parents cross to produce offsprings, their offspring is called first filial generation or F1 generation. Second filial generation or F2 generation. When the first generation offsprings cross among themselves to produce second generation offsprings, then this offspring is called second filial generation or F2 generation. So students, we will study about the Gregor John Mendel's characteristics and experiments in our next video. Till now, we had seen what heredity means and what do you mean by variation. And these are some important terms. Thank you for watching the video.